I love Pickleball. It's one of those games where you're reluctant to actually try it, but once you do, you actually kind of fall in love with it, which is exactly what happened to me the last few months. Except I'm still not too good at the game. No! Okay, I think I might need a new paddle! Except I'll be making them out of Pickles! Yep, didn't see that one coming, huh? But here's the plan. I start off by forming a mold for the paddle, fill it with a ton of sliced pickles, pour epoxy over and let it cure, and lastly cut out the shape of the paddle and attach a handle. Easy, right? Well, as you will all find out, it really wasn't. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First things first, I had to make a mold out of this acrylic sheet that I have. I measured out the size of the paddle, taped up my acrylic to dampen the vibrations, and got to cutting. So I have to cut up acrylic sheets right here, but I waited for you guys for the most satisfying part. So the plan is very simple. I have a huge piece of acrylic right here. I'm gonna put the other piece on top, which is the same size as this thing here, the paddle. And then I'm gonna put these around it to make a mold. The process in itself wasn't really hard. I used a special plastic bonder glue, which in my opinion worked really well, and all I had to do was to make sure that there were no cracks for the epoxy layer to seep through. I'll wait for this to dry. Let's go dry some pickles, shall we? Now when I first came up with this idea, I literally thought it was gonna be straightforward putting pickles in epoxy, and that's it. However, what I didn't think about was that pickles are 80% liquid, which means once I put the epoxy on top, there is a high likelihood that the pickles inside the epoxy become moldy after a period of time. And after doing a ton of research, I found out the easiest way would be to dehydrate the pickles first, which is what I'm doing here.
We are finally done. It looks a little leathery and kind of weird, but let's see. It tastes really, really salty. My goodness. If you can't tell, it's like super, super late. So I'm gonna pack these up and I'll see you guys in the morning for the next steps. Good morning! We got the pickles right here. Let's get to epoxying, shall we?
So the first thing I did was take my mold and draw on the shape of the paddle just so I know where to put all the pickles.
Time to do the fun part, mixing epoxy. I'm not looking forward to this. I don't know, I just don't like doing it.
I'm not sure about you, but somehow I just don't like mixing epoxy. I don't know, maybe it's just because it's so sticky and it smells a little bit and I have to mix it really, really well and my hand just gets sore. I don't know, maybe it's just a combination of everything, but at the same time, I also really love how the end result turns out usually.
And now for the fun part, pickles! It's a strong smell. Honestly, you wouldn't want to be here right now.
My next step was to arrange the sliced pickles on top of the first layer of epoxy in the shape of the paddle that I drew on beforehand. And once I was satisfied with the shape of the paddle, I went ahead and mixed the second coat of epoxy and poured that on top too, where I noticed I had to reposition the pickle slices because I didn't fix them to a specific spot. This was a little frustrating, but also didn't take too long. And once I was satisfied with the position of everything, I took the heat gun and tried to get as many air bubbles out as possible.
We are done. I'm gonna let it cure for the next 2 days. In the meantime, let's work on the handle. So here's how I've been feeling about making the handle the last few weeks. All because I just couldn't figure out how to preserve a whole pickle without it looking like this after dehydration. I know. It looks horrible. And so I tried a bunch of things. I even thought about using formaldehyde, the stuff they use in corpses, to preserve the pickle. Except it was really toxic. You could say I was in quite the pickle. I know, pretty bad joke. But after hours and hours of research, I think I might have found a solution.
So after chatting with ChatGPT for quite a while, it recommended soaking the pickle in 95% or higher ethanol alcohol for quite a few days.
Alright, I have the pickle right here. I'm probably gonna leave it like 2 or 3 days in here just for it to really, really submerge in the alcohol. But in the meantime, let's see how the paddle's doing. So it's been about 2 days. Let's see how it looks. It is looking pretty cool. There is like stuff protruding out of it. I don't know why, but it is hard. So I'm gonna get it out of the mold and sand it down.
I quite honestly thought it was gonna be way harder to get the paddle out of the mold, but with a few taps from a hammer and a chisel, I got it out quite easily, and this is how it looked like. I then sketched on the shape of the paddle, put some masking tape on top to dampen the vibrations, and traced the shape of the paddle one more time, and got ready to use my jigsaw. This looks dope. Now I just gotta
sand it. I'm gonna clean it off and hopefully it will look like a cool paddle. So I've cleaned it off. It doesn't look too polished yet. It has the shape of a pickleball paddle, which is great, but I'm gonna sand it down a little bit more just to polish it a little bit more tomorrow, since it's pretty late and I don't want to kill my neighbors with a ton of sound. So yeah, see you tomorrow. All right, so it's been about 3 days and I have sanded it down way more. It's a lot smoother now. I don't know if you can see it, but before I completely polish this, I want to get the handle on top of this, which is where this comes in.
Like I showed before, I wanted to use a pickle for the handle, which I preserved in alcohol. And after 3 whole days, I opened it up and dang, it stank. On a side note, whoever's doing this camera work really needs to be fired. Anyways, I got the pickle out of the jar, rinsed it with water to clear off any of the excess alcohol, and then wiped the whole thing down and got ready to use it. I took my X-Acto knife, measured out what I needed to cut, and got to work on the pickle. This took up the whole next hour of just me trying to figure out the size of the hole I needed.
And now for the moment of truth. It actually fits! Yeah, let's go!
Yeah, I was stoked since this seemed like one of the hardest parts of the project. I then ended up mixing some more epoxy, filling the inside of the hole I just cut out, and inserting it into the handle, while lastly pouring epoxy over the whole thing.
Now all I gotta do is wait for this to cure for 3 days, and fingers crossed it turns out really, really well.
Sadly, when I checked on it the next morning, the pickle seemed to have wrinkled up and not cured at all. Probably because of the excess alcohol in the pickle. So in hopes of the pickle eventually curing correctly, I spent the next 5 days just adding more and more epoxy layers on top of the pickle.
So, the pickle is fully cured. Not a sentence I thought I'd say in my lifetime. But anyway, it looks a little bit wrinkly, which I can't change. But what I did over the last couple days, I also added a thin layer of epoxy onto the side just to make it a little bit more glossy. But the problem is it dripped onto the smoother surface here, which means I have to sand it down for a last time. Huh, I think I just did.
Now for the last and final step of this project, I mixed up some good old epoxy again and applied a very thin layer to the surface of the paddle to really make it glossy and shiny.
And voila, it's the next day, the epoxy has dried, and I loved how it turned out. So without further ado, here's how it looks like. Now the real question is this actually a viable paddle? Only one way to find out, right? All right, let's do this. Oh no! That was so weird. Nope. No! Turns out the paddle did not make me play better, so I'm gonna go practice, but be sure to subscribe. If I'm being completely honest, this looks like a wrinkly peanut.